Welcome to Working from the Inside Out. I'm your host, Ellie O'Brien, and today I am super excited to be sitting down to have a chat around Mental Health Awareness Week. So this is about my third attempt to do a podcast, and even postponing a special guest I had lined up yesterday, because I've been in the trenches this week of mental health and supporting somebody very close to me go through a really tough time. And it just made me think how, I had planned to do this before, but now even more so, I know that I have an obligation to speak up and to have a voice in this space and bring awareness to it, because as a society and a culture, we are living in a sick environment. And recently I've been listening to Dr. Gabor Mate's book, The Myth of Normal, and basically how what is normal for us now is not our normal at all. It's a really unhealthy society, and there's lots of healing to be done. So I wanted to share a little bit today around my thoughts on mental health and what that means to me. And what I've really learned this week is that all the skills and the doing of mental health, mental well-being has paid off this week, because it not only has just been like things that I've read in a podcast or books or practiced with horses and in my work, but this week I have needed that to be able to apply it to the situation and help this person through the tough times. And I think if I hadn't have had that knowledge and those skills, then I would have likely spiraled down myself. And don't get me wrong, it's been a really tough week, but having those skills and the knowledge has meant that I can keep myself as mentally strong as I can, and I've been able to help this person with the skills that I know can help as well. So I've written down some notes so that I can make sure I can talk about all the things that I want to. So the parts of mental health. I think my journey in mental health really began about 10 years ago when I became a horse trainer. And in those early days, it was really just recognizing that what I was doing with horses wasn't working. I literally had come to a dead end. I had that moment of falling on my knees and crying and going like, why isn't this working? Why can't I help this horse? Am I making it worse? And that then took me down the path of horsemanship and coming to learn how horses thought or think and how they learn, and learning some really amazing skills to help the horse and to help myself. And what I didn't realize at that time was that was the planting of the seed to grow into an incredible journey of self-discovering and healing, and that still goes on to this day as well. But in the beginning, it was just very much about skills. Skills to keep the horse safe, skills to keep myself safe, learning about emotions, and I wouldn't have referred to it as emotional regulation at the time, but I guess being able to control my emotions rather than just be whisked away by them and becoming reactive to situations. So that was in the beginning, and I think that when I link that through into the mental health world, I look at that as those are our mental health skills, those are our mental health fitness things. And for me, some of those things are learning about meditation, and I didn't actually learn that until a little while later down the track when I broke my back in 2015. And I was really lucky to have my mum she gave me this book called Calm. And I'm sure many of you have heard of the Calm app. It's an amazing meditation app. So that, I think it had only just been released. And so I had the book, and then I downloaded the app as well. And I was in a hospital bed, didn't know if I was going to walk again. And then I spent over a month in hospital and learning to walk again. And it was a really tough time. And having that book on learning how to be mindful, learning the basics of meditation was so incredibly helpful, and that kind of put me on a new path as well of learning how to sit with emotions, how to regulate my emotions, how to experience things and not push it down and just carry on. So that was a really great skill. So that's one of the skills that we have. Meditation, I learned about breath work. I learned about exercise. I learned about connection with family and friends. And I think this brings us through into, if you jump onto the Mental Health Awareness Week website, they've actually, and I know we're at the end of the week now, but I think that no matter when you're listening to this, you can jump on there and pick that up and go through the beautiful map that they have laid out right through the week. And so this week's focus is on reconnection, especially because of the last couple of years with COVID. We have become such a disconnected society, and this is just a beautiful little road map for achieving that with some really neat little skills. But one of the other models that they have available on there is the Te Whare Tapawha model, and this was developed by Sir Mason Dury. I think that was in the 80s. And this is actually a model that my mum taught me a few years back, and I integrated it into my clinics because I saw just how beneficial it was for not only us as humans to look at the areas of haora, of our well-being, and we can go through these areas and kind of look at areas that we might be strong in and areas that we might be lacking in. And I thought this totally applies to horses as well. So if we're finding problems arising with our horses, we can not only run ourselves through this model, but we can run our horse through it as well. So just quickly, I will take you through that. So it's kind of meant to be the four walls of the wharenui, the meeting house. So we have the spiritual, the physical, the mental and emotional, whānau, and whenua, which is so whānau is our family and friends, and whenua is our land, our connection to nature and our land and where we come from. So when we take ourselves through those areas, we can kind of see like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I'm feeling really off and really crappy, and my mental well-being isn't as good as it could be because I haven't seen the people that mean the most to me for a long time. Or maybe it's that I haven't been moving, or maybe it's that I haven't had any spiritual practices in place where I'm giving gratitude and connection to something greater, or even if it's breath work or meditation. So in each of these areas we can get skills and we can practice these, and I really love to look at that and think about it as if it is our mental fitness. And I think that's what I've seen this week, is because my mental fitness has been really strong, and I've focused on developing that over the last, let's say, 10 years, more so in the last 5 years. that this week I've had those to be able to fall back on, that mental fitness. And they're things that we practice, just like going to the gym. If we stop going to the gym, which I haven't been doing the last couple of weeks, but we lose that strength. So it's things that we have to keep up, we have to keep practicing. And I think in the beginning that can feel like quite overwhelming and like, oh, that's just another thing that I have to do. But once we start to even just choosing one small thing, one small skill in one area, and we start practicing it and creating it as not just a routine or a habit, but as a ritual, and we begin to realize how beautiful that feels and how much it really, really helps in the scheme of things. And I think it's easy to go like, oh, that's like kind of cringy and cliche, like meditation or one thing I practice is cold showers, and it's like, oh, here we go. But I think when you begin on that journey and start doing those things, you just realize how much it helps you, not only in your day-to-day of keeping you well, but when it comes time to when we have these big life crisis moments, that we've got that strength to be able to fall back into, to lean into, that carry us through. So that's really important. So that's our Te Whare Tapawhā model, and a really great way of skills to look at that. And then I think we can begin to take things another layer deeper as well. So those are all really great. The skills are fantastic, but I also see them as a band-aid. We can meditate as much as we like, we can do cold showers as much as we like, but that's kind of just putting that band-aid on top as well. But that's not to say we shouldn't be doing those, because I still really, really rate doing those things. But we can take it another layer deeper, and we can begin to unpack all the stuff that is underneath. So the healing side of things. And for me, my journey of healing has been really about self-discovery, looking at patterns that show up in my life, beliefs and stories, and how they can potentially be creating a lifestyle or an environment that isn't promoting my best and my higher self. And it might even just be small things like scrolling on TikTok for too long, or reaching for foods that aren't great for me. Maybe it is, and why I'm kind of talking about these things is because often these things are not looked at as like overly bad. It's kind of like, we can get away with that. Having a glass of wine every day after work, working too much. They're kind of like and I've heard people talk about this as being as privileged things, privileged ways of coping, because they're not overly bad. You're not overly judged for doing things like that, but they're still not necessarily healthy for us. And in comparison to areas that are a lot more harmful, that are harmful to ourselves and the people that we love and care about, and those things are a lot easier to see. So I got a little bit off track with where I was going, but taking a look at how those sort of things are showing up in my life, bringing awareness to them, and then beginning to unpack them, look at where they came from, and healing those parts of myself. So that led me then to trauma and understanding what trauma meant. And we have trauma with a big T, and that's when we kind of have like big events happen, like a car crash or being abused, and it's often just that sudden one-off event that creates the trauma. Then we have the little t trauma, and that can be things in our childhood, like not having somebody who is attuned to us. We don't feel seen and heard, and our needs aren't being met, and those things might happen over time. And then there is complex trauma, and this is just in no way speaking from an expert point of view. This is just my own learnings and uncovering, so no doubt I will have missed things out, and it actually creates a little bit of anxiety in sharing this, because I don't want to lead people down the wrong path. I don't want to claim that I'm an expert, but purely just share my own journey. And I encourage you, like, if I've talked about things, don't just take my word for it. Go in and look up experts in each of these areas, so that you can kind of get the full picture of things. So that's just a little bit of a precursor. And then I think there's complex trauma, which can be a combination of the two and things ongoing. So that is sort of where my journey has gone to now of, okay, that's great, I've learned all these really amazing skills, but often I feel like I'm fighting fires and I'm having to put them out through taking another cold shower or meditating on a certain thing. But now kind of going, okay, what is the root of this? I need to start peeling away those layers and healing those parts of myself, and having compassion. And that has been a really fascinating journey for myself, and one of the more recent places that I've arrived at as well is learning that it's not only my own traumas that I carry throughout my adult life and my childhood, but it's also intergenerational. It's also from our culture and our society, and a big one for me this year has been looking into my Māori culture and understanding some sensations that I was experiencing, not even realizing where they were coming from. But I had a few years ago picked up on some sensations that I had experienced, and didn't know where they were from. And then fast forward to this year, learning about intergenerational trauma and realizing that those sensations that I felt back then, that weren't massive, but they were holding me back from being my best version of myself, and realizing that those were trauma wounds from my ancestors, from my Māori culture, that I had carried and taken it on board. And I speak about this in another podcast as well, so I can go more in depth into it in there. But the mental health journey is such a beautiful one. It's something that I'm learning that I am so deeply passionate about, because I want to be able to be a voice in the collective of healing, and I see how that impacts our horses. I see what happens, and it used to destroy me when I would get sent horses that were so broken, and I just knew that these horses, it wasn't their stuff to carry. It was coming from the humans, and back then, a few years ago now, I felt a lot of frustration and resentment to humans, because I was like, you guys are doing this to these horses, and that was so hard, and it exhausted me and it burnt me out. And now with my understanding of trauma, it has allowed me to have compassion for myself and my parents and my ancestors and people in general, that when I see people or horses that are hurting, that it's not about them. It's not a reflection of them and their behavior. It's about these deep old wounds that are yet to be healed. I'm pretty emotional about this. And that's where our work needs to be, so that we can all begin to heal, so that these things don't carry on being projected onto each other, onto our children, onto our horses. And I think that when we get to that place, like, maybe I'm romanticizing it, but I feel like I'm not. What a beautiful world that would be to live in. Yeah, so what have we got here? Mental Health Awareness Week. This week has been about reconnection, as I said it earlier on. And I know we're at Friday now when I'm recording this podcast. But on Monday, I'll just quickly take you through what has been so far this week, and hopefully you jump onto the website and jump into their resources and go through the beautiful little map that's laid out of reconnection. So Monday was about reconnection to the self. And for me, a practice of reconnection to self, and I did this earlier in the week, was while I was on my horse. I love doing it while I'm on my horse because I feel like I'm already in this little sacred space. I'm so present while I'm out there. Like, I'm connected to nature. I'm connected to my horse, nature. I'm connected to myself. I'm mindful in the moment, present. And so it kind of aligns everything for this really powerful, special moment to reconnect to self. And so I was sitting out there on Louis, and we were just like, we'd done a little bit of movement, we'd come to a stop, and sometimes I do this before I even start moving as well, on the ground or on their back, or maybe multiple times, is just kind of going inward and looking at and feeling into what is showing up. What am I feeling in this moment? Am I feeling tension in my chest or in my shoulders, where I tend to hold emotions? Do I feel butterflies in my tummy? Am I holding my bum muscles or my calves tight? Does my head feel scattered and messy, or is it kind of feeling like blank and like there's not a lot going on there? And instead of judging those things, or instead of trying to push them down and ignore that they are there at all, just sitting with it, getting curious. Maybe it's kind of going, that's interesting. Why are you there? Why are you showing up? And having this compassion for it. And sometimes I notice that just by spending that time being aware and creating a space that's safe and loving and kind for these feelings to be, they'll often just pass. And that might just be through like a clearing feeling or a weight lifting. Sometimes it's through emotions like bubbling up, whether it's having a cry or having a little shout, although that one doesn't happen too often. That'd be if I have had some big stuff go on and I haven't created time for letting it pass through. That was actually it's very vulnerable. I learned it actually my sister taught it to me quite some years ago, but I was always like, no, I can't do that. That's so embarrassing. And then I did a woman's hikoi last year, and they introduced this thing called primal screaming. And even then, I couldn't do it. I wasn't at that stage that I could let myself experience that. And it wasn't until earlier this year, when I had some really big stuff go on, that I let myself experience it, and just how incredible it is for letting go of, especially as a woman, where we're taught that we can't express anger, whether it's healthy or not. And of course, when we aren't allowed to express anger, it does manifest itself as being unhealthy rage. But letting myself experience that expression of healthy anger, so freeing, holy moly. Still don't know if I can do it in front of people, but in the car's good, and my horses don't judge either, so there's that. So reconnection to self, that's a really important thing. So that was Monday's exercise. Tuesday, what did we have then? That was our reconnect to a friend or family member. And so I did, and I reached out to a really lovely friend who I trust and feel safe with sharing. I think that's an important thing. And I mean, like, you could just reconnect with somebody that you haven't spoken to for a while, just sending a quick, hey, how are you? How's everything been? That kind of reconnection, that's just great as well. But on Tuesday, I felt like I needed to connect with a friend and share what was going on for me, the big stuff that I've been through this week. And part of me was like, no, like, I don't want to share with anybody. I don't want to be a burden. This is really big. Nobody else should have to carry this. What if they've got their own stuff going on? And those can be all the thoughts that we hold, and stop ourselves from being able to connect with the people that we love, the people that are actually there to support us and be there for us. And what I discovered was, when I shared what was going on for me, she was able to share her experience with this as well, and through that created a feeling of sameness, a feeling of not being alone. She was able to support and share, and that was just such a beautiful feeling, I think, probably for both of us. It feels good when I know, like, when I have people reach out to me, it feels good that they feel safe and like they can trust me to hold their big stuff. So I think it goes both ways. So yeah, reconnecting to whānau or friends. Then what was our next one? Wednesday. I need notes for this week because my brain is not holding much. A special place. So maybe that is just going to a really beautiful spot that feels good to you. Maybe for some that's going home to your homeland, or just a place in the world that feels good. And I saw on the website that they suggested, if you can't do those things, maybe it's even just closing your eyes and doing a visualization of being in that place and space, and that can be really powerful as well. Okay, so Thursday was connection to community. So I really love this one, and I haven't done it this week especially, but I guess I'm doing it right now. I guess doing a podcast is connection to community. So maybe you've got community spaces, whether that is an online Facebook group or an online community that you're part of. Maybe it is your church, or any group in your community that you can be involved with. And if you're not, then maybe this is a great opportunity to reach out to something. Maybe it's just helping somebody. Maybe it's giving somebody $1 or $2 that is out in the street. Maybe it's giving them a jacket that you haven't touched for quite some time. Just doing something to reconnect into your community. And I think this takes us out of just focusing on ourselves and realizing that we're part of a far bigger thing than just ourselves. And I think sometimes, like, when we have lots going on and we're kind of inward, our world can feel really small but big and overwhelming at the same time. And I find for myself that when I'm going through those sort of times, being able to reach out and help somebody else or do something in a community group setting can just be a great reminder that, like, hey, we're all in this together. We've all got stuff going on, and being able to help in a small way is a really neat feeling. Okay, and then Friday's one is reconnection to nature. So it's actually, my little podcast set here is out on our deck under cover, but we look out to, and hopefully I might be able to do like a little film around at the end of this so that you can see. But it's a bit of a drizzly day today, and we're up quite high, so we look down over a valley that is filled with this beautiful native bush, and there's fog that's rolled in. And so even just being out here in this and watching the little raindrops that are collecting underneath the ledge of the seats, and I can feel that cool air. So just being out in nature, even if it's just stepping outside for a minute and connecting to what you can feel, what you can hear, what you can taste, what you can smell. Those are all such helpful little things with reconnecting. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I've got some wonderful guests lined up that I had hoped to get to talk to this week, but it hasn't worked out. But I think that's totally okay, because mental health awareness is, for me, it's not about just 1 week of the year. Mental health awareness is about every day. It's about showing up and being a voice and doing the work, being in the work. Always growing, learning, expanding. So I'm excited to have these people on. I'll announce those soon. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'd love to hear your stories. So please share. If there's anyone that you would love to hear me talk to, if there's anything that you'd love to hear me talk about, then please share that with us as well. And of course, today's podcast was proudly brought to you by Atlas Equine Massager. So big thanks to them. And yeah, we'll see you in the next episode.